Alright, in this workshop we're going to make a game. So our basic objectives are to understand some of the core principles of programming. We're going to make the game. It's going to be like a Flappy Bird clone, and it will be a relatively easy game to make, but it will also be pretty rewarding. And we also want to go over some basic concepts with programming in the with the Python programming language. So I just want to point out really quickly that in a moment I will talk about a lot of programming concepts that possibly it'll be a little bit more involved and more information than is really required for making the game. Making the game will be a pretty straightforward process where we'll just follow steps and drag and drop these kind of blocks, and it will be pretty simple. So if you're confused about the programming concepts that I'll cover, don't worry, they're more for background information and your conceptual understanding of programming. Okay, so the basic principles of programming: loops, conditionals, variables, data types, operators, functions, and objects. These are all independent of what programming language you're using. You're going to be using these concepts. So loops are used for, say you have a list of items. In this example, I have 5 pencils, and I wanted to paint each pencil the color red. So you would have the list of pencils, and then you would do something what we call iterating. And iterating is going through the list. So we use loops to go through the list. So we would iterate through the list of pencils and paint each of them individually red. Conditionals, these are how we branch logic in our code. Later on, we will work with conditionals to make a level 2 in our game. Variables, this is how we store values. And it's also how we reference, we can assign different things to variables to be able to reference those things. Data types, this is the type that you assign a variable. So a variable can take on a type of either text or a number or a floating point. So this is how you would designate what kind of variable, what kind of type the variable is storing. Operators, these are basically our mathematical operators: addition, equality, assignment, division, multiplication. I think there may be a few more. Functions and objects. So I will talk individually about both of these, but in general, functions are how you group blocks of code so that you can reuse them. You reuse it later. So say you have a particular action like addition, and you use that addition, that line of code that performs addition multiple times in your code, and you don't want to write out the whole thing to do the addition every time. So you can create a function which will be like a block of code, and you can do what you call calling the function, and then it will perform the same action. Objects, these are basically how you would there are objects like you would call an apple an object, or in this example, anything would be an object. You could think of like an entity or a computer or anything. is an object, and so objects inherently have traits, which we call attributes, and they also have what we call methods. Methods are functions that are specific to that object. So we'll get into that here. So functions. Down here we have the basic blueprint what a function will look like. You use the def keyword to define a function. So functions have arguments, parameters, and they may have a return value. So an argument is what you pass into the function. So in this example, we defined our function up here, and then we called it down below here. So our arguments are what we passed into the function when we called it, and that would be the 3 and the 5. Those are our arguments. We're adding 3 and 5. And then the parameters are what are the variables that get assigned these values and that we can use in our function. So 3 gets assigned to A and 5 gets assigned to B, and then we can use them in our function where we do A plus B. And then also functions can have return values, and that's what we do here in this function. We return the value A plus B, and then you can see when we call it down below here, we assign the variable. Result is a variable. We assign the variable result to the return value of our add function, and then we have a print function. Prints basically take it allows us to display things to the console, which is usually how when we run a Python function, when we run a Python program, we're gonna usually run it in the console, and then it will output it in the console. And this is just a comment where it shows that the output will be a 3 plus 5. Okay, objects. Like I said, an object can be anything. It can be an apple, a ball, a car, and objects inherently have traits. Like an apple may have a color, a weight, or anything. So these are the features about the object that are stored, and we store them in variables. And so yes, those are our attributes. Down here in the example, we have the attributes health and name. And then we also have methods. Methods are functions that are specific to an object. And when I say specific to an object, meaning they're accessed through the object, and they perform some particular task. They're usually to do with your attributes, but they can also just be something simple like this function. I suppose it does have to do with the attributes where we print the name and then jumps. So objects are created, so this part is a little important. Objects are created from classes. Classes are blueprints of our blueprints, and then with that blueprint we instantiate the object. In this example, we have we're creating a class called player. We're giving it the attributes name and health, and the method jump. And then here on the right, we're instantiating our player method, or our player class, by creating these objects. And we're assigning the name attribute here on the top to Noah and the health attribute to 100. And we do another object with Alex and 80. So this is just a really simple Python example where we just run a simple what we call a hello world example where we just print something to the console. So you can use the print function and then some sort of text or variable within the brackets to print what you want. So in this example, it's saying print hello world. I can change the text to like maybe add, oh, oops, my thing, a bunch of exclamation marks, and it'll print with the exclamation marks. So that's our basic, just how, like, when you're, getting your whole development set up and everything, you want to just test it and make sure a very basic example will work with when you write a little bit of code and then test it, run it. Down here we have just a reinforcement of how objects function because they're pretty important. We have our class blueprint player. It has a name and a health. This init here is a special function. This is our constructor. So it's called a constructor in a different programming language. Here it's initializing our object. So we're giving it's a method just like any function where it would have parameters here, and we're passing in, when we create our object, we pass in the attributes Noah and 100 to assign them to our parameters name and health, and then we assigned our attributes name and health to those parameters. And then another important part here is we have the jump method, and so with our attributes and as well as our methods, we can access these from our object using the dot notation. So here we instantiated player 1. We can access player 1's attributes and player 1's methods by first listing the player variable, the object variable, the variable that we assigned the object when we instantiated it. Here we are instantiating the player class to create an object and assigning it to player 1. So then to access the methods and attributes, we can list the variable name and then do a dot, and then in this case we're going to access the jump method. So we can list the name that we defined the jump method with and then pass in the argument. And then we can just see this method prints the name of the player and then jumps however the distance that we passed in as an argument. We can also access the attributes if we just did the dot and then either did name or health. Okay, now we get into the fun part where we create our game. So we're gonna navigate to arcademakeCode.com by just clicking on this link. So when you click on that link, it will most likely take you here. Mine took me here because I'm not sure, maybe because the cookies or something, but it will take you, it'll either take you straight to where you want to go, or it'll take you to the website Makecode, to which you'll want to navigate. You'll see this page and you'll click on the arcade type here. So we'll start coding on the arcade type. and then we need to sign in. So you'll either sign up with just a Google email or a Microsoft account. Now that we're all signed in, we're gonna create our new project. So we're gonna follow these steps, and we're gonna try to go through them pretty quick because there are a lot of steps, but they're not all that, they're pretty simple. So you should be able to follow along quite easily. So as the steps go, we're gonna click on this big button and create our new project. And I'm gonna call it W Workshop 3.0 Flappy Bird Workshop 3.0. You can give it whatever name you want. I've just made a bunch of different examples, so I'm gonna give it this name. Okay, and so once you create your project, you'll be will be given this editor environment. So this environment, we have in the middle part here, we have all our drop downs. These are all blocks that we can drag and drop into our code, which will be this board here. We have a start block to begin with. Click that to Python. And then on the far left, we have our window that we can test our game with. So, okay, so let's move on to the next step. The first thing we're going to do is create our player. We're going to go into the sprites dropdown and grab the player block and drag it into our start. So sprites, here we have our player. I'm going to drag it into here. Let's see, what do we do next? Right. So, yeah, okay. So now we're gonna give we may have a player, but we don't really have a like a skin or what our player looks like. So we're gonna create our player. So we click onto this little box here, and now we have this editor to create our player. Right, we can draw our sprite asset and use the different blocks to create it, and then we'll give it a name, and then we'll click done. So I'm gonna create a bird. Okay, now we have our player. You can create your player however you'd like, but since we're making like a Flappy Bird clone, I did my best to make like a little bird player. Okay. We spoke about variables. We're going to give our player a variable so that we can reference it later on in our code. So it is assigned the default variable name mySprite. I'm going to rename that to bird player. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to get into a little bit more of like an artistic. We're going to create our scene. So we're going to give it a background color. We're going to go into the scene dropdown and grab the set background color to, and then select a color. So go to scene, set background color, and we're going to drag it into the start block. And then I'm going to click on the empty thing here and give it like a say like a sky blue So the bird is like flying through the sky. Okay, the next part in our creating our scene is creating a tile map. The tile map will more or less be all the different tiles we want to add to our scene. So it will be, we'll be creating like an obstacle course that our bird will be flying through, as well as like a finish line and like a ground. So to do that, we're gonna start by going to the scene and then finding the set tile map block. Okay, here, and then set tile map. Okay, now we have that. And then let me look at the instructions. Yeah, we're gonna click on the tile map to be able to open the tile map editor. Here we have the tile map editor. We're gonna go to the next part here. The tile map that we have currently set up here is just like a 16 by 16 square. There's not a lot of room for our player to move around in. We want it like more horizontally longer so our player can fly through the scene. So we're going to change the dimensions here. We're going to change it to 50 by 16. So I'm just going to go 50 by 16. Nice. Okay, get rid of these tabs. I don't think I need them. Next part, we're going to make our first tile. This will be the ground tile, the tile that makes up the floor of our scene. So if we can see in the instructions here, we're going to go to the My Tiles little tab part here and then click the plus button. We're creating a tile. So My Tiles, to the plus button. Okay, and here we have an editor to create a single tile. Let me try to make a ground tile. Okay, we have our ground tile. It kind of looks like a Minecraft block, and we can click on the tile, and then if we have a mouse, you would do this, or if you don't have a mouse, you would do it with your keyboard, but you would click on the map here and then drag the tile however you would like. So we're going to drag it all the way across for our ground. Okay, and then we're going to click done and go to our next step. Now that we have our ground, we're going to create our pillars, and this will be our obstacle course. So we're going to go back into our tile map, clicking here, and we're going to create another tile called which will be our whatever our obstacle will be. So I'm just going to make it a brown tile. Call it brown, and then I'm gonna just for our obstacle course, we can imagine our bird is it will be flying through this scene. So we're going to try to make it so that the bird can fly through these little obstacles. And you may have to adjust this, but because it may be too difficult. And also here, if you make your first obstacle too far close to where the player will be spawned, it will keep hitting the first pillar and it'll keep resetting, so we don't want that. But I'm just going to drag my obstacle course. Okay, let's move on to the next step. Here we're going to create our finish line. So we're going to make another tile which will basically look like a checkered flag, which will clearly define our finish line. Okay, now that we have our finish line tile created, we're going to do the same thing where we drag and drop it, but we're going to do it at the very end here. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're going to do it at the very end where we can hit the finish line. Okay, in this part, we're gonna create just a few different artistic tiles to make our scene a little bit more realistic looking. So I think I'll try to make the clouds and maybe a bug and maybe wind. Okay, I created a few different tiles. I have like a tile, like a little cloud here. I have a bug that I created, maybe like it's like a butterfly. And then I have like a wind. The scene can become really busy if you have too many tiles, but I'm gonna try to just add like a few here and there, just to add some different stuff. Okay. Okay, now we're going to draw our background. So we have created our obstacle course. We created some different tiles to give it some life. Now we are actually going to draw like a backdrop. So we're gonna go into scene and then set background image to scene, set background image to then we're gonna click on here and then we're gonna draw our scene. I'm gonna, yeah. Okay, now we have a background. You can go whichever creative route you would like with your background. I have here like a little example where they look like waves, but they're actually mountains, and like I have clouds. They look pretty nice. I did something a little different and created like kind of these other mountains. I don't know what I'm doing now. I was trying to make a cloud, but you can use the fill tool too. But yeah, you can go whichever route you would like with that. Okay, now we're gonna get into the core functionality. We've messed with the artistic side where we created our player entity, we created our scene. Now we're gonna get into the functional parts. So the first functional part will be giving our players some movement. So we're gonna go in the controller and find the move sprite button with the buttons block, controller, move sprite with buttons block. So we're going to drag that into start just like we've been doing. And a very important part that this will not work if you do not click your bird, the variable that you assigned your player. I name my variable bird player. You can name it whatever you want, but you have to be consistent with selecting that variable. So our player should have movement now. We can see it does. But we can also recognize our player can go right off the screen, and we don't want that. We want our camera to follow the player, because there's actually more seen here than we're viewing. We can see we can't even see our ground right now. So we want our camera to follow the player. So yeah, we're gonna go into the scene and then find the camera follow sprite block. Scene, camera follow sprite. Drag that into our start block, and again we want to click our player variable. And now if I move my player, you can see that the camera is changing with the movement of my player, and we can also see the ground. Okay. So yeah, like make sure you have this part working. So take a moment to stop and test your movement. This is just for reference, so you can see what we have going on, but we're gonna move on now. So gravity, this is where our bird will be being pulled downward. So we're gonna go in the sprites drop down and select the set sprite block. So we're gonna select this one right here. So yeah, we need our bird player variable to be selected, and I'll get into this in a moment, but we want to be selecting the acceleration in the y direction. So in our scene here, up and down is y direction, left and right is x direction. For gravity, we want to be pulling the player downward, so we're going to be selecting the y direction. And I'll say in a moment why we're selecting acceleration, but for now we'll just set it there. And then looking at the instructions, we're going to find that 150, the value 150 will be an okay acceleration, but you can mess around with that if you don't like it. 150. Okay. Okay, now we also want our player moving to forward, so to the right. So we're gonna do the same thing, but in our drop down, we're gonna grab the velocity. So we're gonna need another one of these blocks, which we'll grab from sprites. Here we're gonna drag it in the start. We want our bird player variable selected, and we're going to select velocity in the x direction. So notice we have velocity selected here and acceleration selected up here. Like I said, I'll talk about this in a moment, but for now, we're just going to select those. And then the value 60. So we're going in a velocity of 60 forward. And you can, again, play with that if it doesn't work too well, but it should be an okay value for moving forward. Okay. So like I said, I wanted to take a moment to talk about gravity and velocity. So acceleration will be simulating our gravity. Obviously, acceleration is how fast you go from 0 to a particular speed, and that really aligns with how gravity is simulated, where we start at like a slow speed and then we start to fall faster and faster, and that really like that aligns with basically how gravity will look in our game. So, and then velocity is different. If we tried to simulate gravity with velocity, we'd just be falling at a constant speed, and it doesn't. I mean, you could do that, but it wouldn't look like gravity very well. So we can see in our game here. Well, we're just falling for now, but we can see we slowly drop, and then will increase in speed. If we did it, if we set our gravity with acceleration, then it would just be dropping really fast, and it wouldn't look like gravity very well. And we can see in the left and right position, we don't. In the horizontal position where we have our velocity in the x direction, we don't want to slowly start and go slow and then speed up and speed up. We want to just move at a constant speed forward. So, and also the very top left is our 0, 0 coordinate for our editor or our scene here. So when we move in a positive, when we set a positive acceleration, we're going, as we go down in our scene, we're going in a positive y direction. And when we go right in our scene, we are going in a positive x direction. So that's why these values are set to a positive value. Okay, so the next part is making it so we can click a button and then have our bird player go up, and then it'll fall, and then we'll click the button and it'll go up. So kind of like a flying motion. So we're going to go into the controller menu and find the on A button pressed block. Controller on A button pressed. Okay, we have that block. And we're going to, again, we're going to grab the this block that allows us to mess with different velocities, accelerations, and movements. We're going to grab it from the sprites menu again. So here, the set sprite, we want our bird player variable selected, and we're going to select a velocity, or we don't want acceleration to simulate our flying movement. When we press the A button, we want to immediately go upwards, not like an acceleration. Like acceleration is more for simulating gravity. So in the drop down, we'll select velocity in the y direction. Like I said, up and down is the y direction, so we want velocity in the y direction. And also, like I said, the top left is the 0 coordinate, so if we want to go upward, we want to go in a negative direction. We want to go decreasing. Downward is increasing. So if we can see here, we're going to set it to a negative value, and negative 70 is an okay value. Okay, so let me refresh this, and if I click the A button, we can see the player is flying upward, and it drops. We can also click the tab button, which is really nice for that, just like playing around with it. I don't have to click the A on their controller panel. I can also use the arrow keys on my keyboard to control the player movement. But we can see here we have some problems where we're flying right through our pillars, and we want to lose the game if we hit the pillars, and we want to win the game if we hit our finish line. So those are the things we're going to work on next here. So to accomplish that, we need a collision detection. So if we collide with one of the pillars, something will happen. So this block will allow us to recognize a collision. So we'll go in the scene and then find this overlaps block. So pause that for a moment. Scene, and if I can find it. So this block right here, where it says the overlap tile, we will not drag that into the start block, just like our player movement, we'll have it outside of that. And we want to select the block that is going to perform some sort of action when it overlaps. So we want to have our player, we need to have the player selected here. When it overlaps, I named my obstacle tile brown. You could have named it obstacle or something else, but I'm going to select that tile because that's the tile that I created the obstacle course. So let's move to the next step. Now we're going to go into the game dropdown and select a particular action that we want to happen. So we could select game over, like they hit the tile, it's game over, or it hits the obstacle course pillar, and it says game over. It's kind of nice if we hit the obstacle course pillar and then just the game resets. So I'm gonna click reset game, and then we drag it into this block. So we can see the logic here is if our player overlaps the obstacle course tile, then our game resets. We can test that, and you can see our player hits the obstacle course pillar and it resets. So another thing here is our player can technically fall right through the floor. I can't show that. Let me get rid of this part here and then reset it. We can see our player goes right through our floor. It goes past our floor. So we want it to have it so when it hits the floor, it gets blocked. Like, there's like it can't go through the floor. So we're going to go back to our tile map, and we're going to select this collider box and drag it over any of the tiles that we don't want our player to go through. And that will be our ground. So let me go to the tile map, and then here we can see the collider, which is this little box here. And when we click it, it'll go red, and then we're going to drag it through our ground because we don't want our player to be able to fly through the ground. We could also do things like we don't want it to fly through maybe the clouds. I'm going to leave that for right now. That might introduce some different bugs that may not be good, but you can play around with different things like that. Okay, now that when we hit the pillar, we lose the game, it basically resets. We want a way to win the game now. So the setup will be, I'm going to drag that back into here so it resets when I hit the pillar. The setup will be exactly the same. The only difference will be what our action will be when we hit a tile, and the specific tile that we hit will be different. I'm gonna pause that. So we want the same like overlap surrounding block. So we'll go into, where did we find that? We found that in, it was sprites, or let me go back real quick and find out which. Yeah, okay, it's in scene. In the scene drop down, we'll find that block that we want. Scene, this one right here. So it looks exactly the same. And now we'll go into the game drop down and grab this. It says game over, but it's a toggle switch, so we can make it the game is over and you win. So we can drag that into here, and like I said, when the player overlaps, we created this finish line checkered block earlier. So we want to have, when the player overlaps this, we have the game over, we win the game. Okay, so we have that all set up. There are a lot of different things that can go wrong, so try not to get frustrated. Try to really watch your variables that you assigned and the details here. But at this point, we're gonna test our game. We're gonna test it for its difficulty. We're gonna try to make adjustments because we created our obstacle course, but the obstacle course you created could be too difficult to beat or anything like that. And we also set a velocity, acceleration, and a velocity for our flying upward. So all these things can be adjusted. So our velocity flying forward can be increased or decreased. Our gravity we can fall faster or slower, and our flying, we can jump higher or we can jump less. So you can see here the acceleration will be our gravity, the velocity in the x direction will be our forward movement, and down here in the press A block where we set our negative velocity in the y direction, that will be our jumping motion. So we can adjust these if you don't like it or if you want to make it more difficult. But let's see here. Yeah, so let's test the game and make sure everything works. Okay. Something I want to point out is this editor can get a little buggy. I'm not sure why it does that, but sometimes it just takes like pressing one of these buttons, like the A button, to get it to work right. Okay, it took a little while, but I finally was able to win the game, and we can see when we hit the checkered flag, you win. And obviously we have when we hit the pillars, we lose. We have I'm just pointing out the different elements that we've accomplished in creating. We've created our background image, we've created our obstacle course, we've created our player entity, We have our core functionality associated with our player, like flying, gravity, forward movement, as well as creating some tiles. Like I said, the obstacle course, and yeah, we have a way to win and lose the game. So these are, we have a working game now. So everything is, it's pretty simple, but there's definitely things we could add on onto this, but everything is working now. So I want to take a moment to just go back, and so everything we've been working on is has been defined within with dragging and dropping blocks, but it's important to recognize that this is all written in code as well. The blocks are just is just a way to abstract out the logic to be able to code with a simpler interface. But but I want to go through the actual code that was written and identify the core programming elements that we spoke about earlier in the code that we have here. Everything we've been working on is in terms of all dragging and dropping blocks, but if we go up to the top here, we can go to the Python tab, which will show our code. And we can see everything, all our blocks are actually written in code. So here we have a function, an onPress function. This function is what allows our bird to fly upward, or fly, like jump and fly. So the bird player is the variable that we assigned our player object, and we're accessing the y velocity attribute using the dot notation and assigning that attribute the value -70. And that occurs when the event that we press the A button occurs. And the onEvent function is a function that we supply it the arguments of a controller, a button that we press, and then the function that defines what exactly we want to perform when we press that button. We have a function onOverlap_tile. This is what allows it so when we hit the pillar, our game resets. So we have an object called game, and we use the dot notation to access the reset method, and we supply it a particular tile that when we overlap that tile, it resets the game. And again, we do that same thing, but we supply it with a different tile, but in this time, and that tile would be our checkered flag, and this time the different action we perform is game over, we win. And down below here, we're creating our bird player. We're supplying a sprite, which is basically what we drew when we created our player. Here, the controller object, we're accessing the move sprite method and supplying it with our bird player variable to allow our player to move in the scene. And then using the scene object, we access the camera follow method, supplying it with our bird player variable so that the camera will follow our player. We also access the scene object to set the background color. This 9 is just a number specifying a particular color. I think that was light blue. And then we have our tile map here. We have basically all of the tiles that we drew, our obstacle course. We have the scene object where which allowed us to draw our background, which was the mountain scene. And then at the very end here, we're setting our acceleration in the y direction and velocity in the x direction. These are both attributes associated with our bird player object. And if, as you remember, we set the acceleration to 150 and our velocity to 60. So that's just like a quick overview of the code and how it all correlates back to what we did when we drag and drop these blocks. So this is pretty much the checkpoint. This part of this video will end here, and we have a working game. All the core functionality is up and running. We have ways to win the game. It's a fully running game. The next videos will look into spawning creating a way so that our player can spawn at different locations within our scene, and then we also will be creating a second level where when we beat our first level, we'll move on. It will create a new level so that we can we'll have 2 levels, and then we'll have the wrap up, which will be the end. But that will be in the next video. So as for now, we have a working game, and that's the end of this part.